Welcome to Power Up, the podcast that uncovers the unique challenges women leaders face today. Join your hosts, Nat and Kristen, as we dive into the tough topics and provide actionable insights you can apply right now. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss any episodes.
In a hilarious twist of events, I look really good in this episode because I've done my hair ready to go to the hairdresser and then made Kristen jump on 10 minutes early so I could get to see the hairdresser. So I have
Are you
turned out
saying in a
pale.
twist of events, I don't look good? It's
Well,
true,
you
I
just look
don't
like
look
you
good.
haven't quite. Now I recognize that you do, in fact, get prepared for recording podcasts because now I see what you look like when you are unprepared for
This
recording
video,
podcasts.
can I just say, okay, in my defense, this video is not going on any social media platforms, number
I
1. No,
think it looks
I
great.
think
It's hashtag
we
authentic.
traveled no, I'm not ready for authentic. We traveled, we traveled
She
yesterday,
says
which is
from a platform teaching authenticity.
yeah, you give a lot, and, I'm tired, and then last night, I said to my husband, I was like, "Let's I think I need to sleep in," and he's like, "No, no, no, we're going to training." So I had a second morning at 5:30 this morning, so I've already done a set of weights, and then I had to come home and take the dog, so in my defense, I feel a little bit physically tired.
Oh my gosh, I love that you went anyway, even though I would be like, "Nah, you go." I'm
Oh,
out, I'm
anyway
out. Well, that's
anyway.
actually a great introduction into what we're talking about today, allyship. Kristen did a great ally, performance this morning going to the training with Kyle. Really there to support him because you were definitely not there to support yourself from the sounds. But what we thought we had this fabulous event yesterday, and it was, and at the beginning of the event it was, an incredible Wahine women's group from one of our fabulous organizations that we work with, and we went along to deliver an in-person workshop, which was amazing, and there was probably about, a handful, maybe about 10 allies in the room, and very early on, I saw a piece of paper on the table, and it was instructions for allies or guidelines for allies, and it was really beautifully done around what the expectations were of, like, turn up, listen intently, be curious, think about different ways you may be able to influence situations after you leave the room, like really, really cool stuff. And it got us thinking. We hadn't talked about allyship for a while, and we've talked about it a little bit in the Power Suit platform. We've had some incredible speakers come in and describe what allyship is and really make it clear it is not a noun, it is a verb. We have to practice it all day, every day. It's not good enough to say, I'm a good person. You actually have to do things all the time to make you a good, not a good person, but make you someone who stands up, includes all of that good stuff that allyship is about. So we just thought today, let's just dig into some observations that we've seen about allyship over the last couple of months, years, and some of the, I don't know, some interesting things we've sort of come across.
First, curious how you describe an ally. Like, what's your definition of an ally?
Kristen going to training at 5:30 a.m. Allyship is someone I think who tends to have a voice that has more power than maybe the group that they are supporting. So they sit outside a group where they have sometimes more privilege to speak on their behalf and to advocate and amplify those voices. But they are also people who may not be impacted by the exclusion or the prejudice or the discrimination who actively work against those sorts of things. Is that what you would say?
Nice. Well, I have been thinking about this, and I just think we should make it as simple as possible because it is such a I don't is it a loaded term? I just think all these areas, putting myself in someone's shoes and wanting to be an ally and been given like do this and do that and getting confused by all of the things that an ally is and isn't. I was kind of like, what is the simplest thing I would boil it down to? And I think an ally is someone who creates opportunities for minorities. Like if I were to measure an ally by someone who creates opportunities for them, that would be my simple term. And then like naturally all sorts of behavior would fit into that, like give
I
voice
do think there
to
is a I
or
think there might be a
advocate
separate
for.
part. Is I don't know, and
Mm.
this might fit under it, but I think some examples recently here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, we have had a what was it called? Like a gender definition bill or a sex definition bill, where it's like, for some unknown reason, some politicians have decided we need to formally define what sex at birth, woman and man is, which is just like, if nothing else, completely irrelevant because it doesn't impact anyone day to day. And I would suggest that allyship would also be speaking out loudly and strongly against that when it doesn't necessarily impact you. And I don't know if
Well,
that fits
I think
under,
it
but it
fits in
may.
it. Yeah.
Okay,
I
great.
kind of think it do I mean, I'm gonna argue it does, just 'cause I'm trying to
Yeah, go
keep
for
things
it.
simple in that, like, creating first of all, putting that bill up, you're not creating opportunities for minorities, if you're effectively taking them away, first of all, and so someone who is voicing is simply looking to reverse that and to actually create opportunities for those that identify as, um, women, you know? And so, yeah, that
Do you
or
think
other.
Do you think the only other, oh gosh, we're gonna go down a definitional spiral, but I think one of the challenges, and like we don't love the word allies anyway because it harks back to sort of military military terms, which and that's complicated as someone, I am an ally, that feels like slightly weird. So there needs to be better language around it. But I wonder as well, some of the things we struggle with at Power Suit as this idea of needing to be saved and needing to be helped. And I think that kind of rubs some people up the wrong way in terms of like, I don't need you to create opportunities. I just need you to stop people reducing them, or like, just to help create a fairer playing field rather than it feel like a savior thing. And I don't know if creating opportunities might come across as like you are helping and you are supporting in a way that's like, in my opinion, allyship is just doing the things that are required to create an equal playing field, not like creating opportunities necessarily.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking professionally speaking, and I know that the most powerful thing in a workplace for a woman is not a mentor and is not someone who identifies an ally. It is someone who is a sponsor. And countless research and studies have shown that sponsorship is what closes gaps and having women willing to step into those gaps. So when I think about that, I think mentorship as an example, is advice, and often we'll give you the confidence to act. So I'm a fan of mentorship, fine, but we also know that women are over mentored. And when I think of what closes leadership gaps, it is someone who gives others confidence in your abilities and presents and opens doors and advocates for you at the highest level. So yes, I'm going narrow with my definition, definitely in a professional context. And when I think about sponsorship being the most powerful gap closer right now to get women at all levels of positions of power and influence in an organization, it's sponsorship. So that is my very narrow definition,
I
just
love
for
it, and I feel
simplicity's
like we
sake.
yeah, and I don't know if we necessarily need to agree on a definition today, and I think this is something that maybe everyone listening can think about is what does allyship mean to you? And what do you consider yourself an ally? Do you find the word weird? Like all of those questions that we probably need to be discussing, to kind of make this feel like less of a murky or uncomfortable area and more of a just like, it's all of us, or it's all of the people who feel like they're
Yeah.
on the
Yeah, and
team.
I think the caveat is that it isn't an identity, it's behavior, and I think we agree to that broad term. So good, 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 good. Okay, well, we got chatting yesterday. I just want to tell one funny story yesterday, which I so appreciated, and it's probably one of those, like, you had to be there, but we
No,
were chatting
if
about
it's the story I think you're gonna tell, it is the funniest thing.
and I love it because 'cause I'm like, and I also think allyship is staged, and I've been thinking about International Women's Day, right? So I'm sorry, I'm just gonna go to a few little,
Mm,
like, follow
yep.
my
Go
tangents
down your
here.
little tangents.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So International Women's Day, there's this big, um, tension with we hold all of these events for women. Let's go past the performative stuff, but, like, I think we can call out a few fails there, but like, we hold all these events for women and women come, great, and then everyone's like, "But the people in the room should be the men." And I think there's actually space for both on International Women's Day. Like Power Suit, we are creating a space for women to connect with one another, to forge networks, to get out of our heads, to relate and identify with one another, to get draw power from one another and, great things. And I'm obviously a massive fan of getting women in a room on International Women's Day. And if there's allies in the room, great. Not saying there shouldn't be. But I equally think there's a place to create awareness and education where men can learn. Because if we go down this like behavior change, going from like to if we think allyship goes from identity to behavior, we need to actually have awareness around what is privilege and like what are women feeling and how might I be an ally. So I think there's plenty of opportunity for allies to be in spaces to learn and to be aware of the dynamics and what's happening for women. So that's my first thing. And then I think there are plenty of other things organizations can do to link that learning and awareness behavior. We'll get perhaps we'll get to that. But what I loved about yesterday is I thought it was an amazing opportunity for allies to get into a room to check that like learning and awareness box. Like they were invited to just be there, to listen, to not take up space, to learn. There was a whole rule sheet. You'll probably remember it more than me, or suggestion sheet. Fine. But what I loved was that they were just there. Like we didn't have to tailor any of our messaging and we're given explicit instruction not to. They're like just, get the women like we didn't have to modify anything to kind of
Which is
make the men more
interesting because that is often
yeah.
the instruction we're given. There'll be
Yeah, yeah.
allies there, make sure they feel comfortable, and it's like, was that allyship or is that now
Yeah.
catering to a small group of people who are maybe the wrong
Oh.
group to cater to?
Totally, totally, and we can get in all that where it starts to tip the other way, and we were at a breakfast where women all of a sudden felt scared to speak up because everything had been so watered down and, the men were the ones that were answering, but anyway, I digress. Yesterday, they were brilliant, and we were chatting about syndromes and the syndroming of women and, you know, clothing in the workplace that isn't fit for purpose for us, for our own safety or furniture or temperature and all this stuff, and just the realities of navigating a space that, wasn't designed with us in mind historically, and, love it. So, and this, like, hilarious ally, excuse me," puts his hand up, and he stands up, and the whole room looks at him, and he goes, men get man flu?" And I'm like, I appreciate that you kinda had to be there, and it might sound obnoxious,
No,
but he was
I think it
funny
was such a
and
showcase.
wry. I
Yeah.
just loved it.
He moved out of that awkward like, a lot of allies unintentionally showcase in those rooms are just so uncomfortable that they ooze discomfort, and they sit off to the side. They often clump together, they talk to each other, they do all the things that women often do when they're the only ones in the room, but we're called underconfident for that, whereas it's accepted for them. And to stand up and make a joke is just like it was so good to just be like, "I feel completely comfortable in this environment. I feel like I can add in a hilarious way to just making this quite normal and like I just thought that was great. I also thought because I came away, you would have known this afterwards, feeling a little bit like, oh, because we do talk about all these syndromes that women get lumped with, and some of the stats are pretty, they are comparing men with women. And I always come away when there's allies in the room feeling like, oh, this is the challenging thing with allyship, and this is very real experiences that there will be people who claim to be allies who come away from those things going, "Oh, I felt a bit man-hatey," and there is a huge sensitivity to that, which I personally feel like is like, are you really an ally then if you don't wanna sit there and listen to some genuine stats about what women go through? And I'm gonna talk about that, like, what we're all going through as a country, where we are constantly, and I think more and more so, grappling with colonialism and all of the awful things that Pākehā, white people, colonialists, have done since over the last 200 years. And as someone who doesn't identify as Māori, but like very much is interested in history and the history of the country and the future prosperity of our country, you, as an ally, sit there and go, oh my goodness, that is so true about what people of my race, my ancestors, have done. And it's okay to be uncomfortable listening to that. And it's okay to be on maybe the wrong side of it's not okay to be on the wrong side of history, but acknowledge that you're on the wrong side of history and that your ancestors, people in your family, even actually in current day, are still profiting and benefiting from the discrimination of a whole other group who were the first settlers of this country. And so I wanted to say that to relate it to allyship when it comes to gender, because I don't think either of us is saying this from the perspective of not having to go through the exact same experience where you have to really and you've come from Canada, which has got very similar history, if not in many ways worse, where you have to really grapple with the stats, the history, the stories paint me and my people very negatively, and that's okay for me to sit in that discomfort rather than kind of call it white people hating or man hating or whatever it is, because it's important to have those conversations.
Yeah, I think there is a difference, and we've learned this now. There's a difference between welcoming, which is yesterday, saying you are welcome here. Here are some rules of engagement and some suggestions, and here's how you might continue to learn about allyship. So that there's a difference between welcoming and accommodating, and we often, and we have been in the past asked to accommodate. And I know the organizers of an event we attended were asked to accommodate such that there was a percentage of men, and there is a rule of what is it, the tipping factor, or I can't remember the name of of this phenomena is called, but there's a mass, oh gosh, what is it? You'll help me in a minute, but there's once a percentage of a room is yeah, it's like a but it's something to do with weight, but it's once a percentage of a room is in a certain way, it tips to either advantage or disadvantage, I'm just gonna use women in this sense. So, in the particular room we were at, it was probably 40% men, and that would have been accommodating for a women's breakfast, and what happened was women remained quiet. And conversely, in a boardroom, if 35% of a board, and stats, research has kind of backed this up, are minorities, the room and decision making shifts to benefit the minorities. So there is a
Benefit the
ratio, and so
minorities or include the minorities?
benefit, include them and, hear their voice and give them
Got
space,
it.
and they actually start to change
They're not just
decisions.
present, they're
Correct,
making an
correct. That's right,
impression.
that's right. So I think there's a difference between welcoming and accommodating, and I think the feelings are, when I think about welcoming, you are creating a space of productive discomfort, which leads to behavior change and learning, like learning, awareness, and then ultimately behavior change. Whereas I think discomfort leads to, sorry, not discomfort, but shame leads to defensiveness. And I think that has been what's happened with unconscious bias training. There has been over and over again, research has shown that it in fact does the exact opposite of its intended um, meaning, because or intention, because first of all, everyone gets forced to do it. It's very you I think there is shame involved in unconscious bias training, possibly. I don't know if that's
I
true,
suppose it
but
depends how it's done, but, like, maybe
correct, and perhaps
accusatory
how it,
and
yeah, and I think there has been, again, it actually, goes the other way, because I think it produces shame and it produces defensiveness, which does the exact opposite of what we want. So I think there is a difference out between, welcoming and that productive discomfort, and yeah.
I do think it would be interesting to see how unconscious bias training has evolved because what you said there insinuates that in the past it's been very focused on one group and their unconscious bias rather than recognizing that every single one of us has unconscious bias and sort of normalizing that that's just how our brains compartmentalize and categorize things and that if we're all more aware of it. So I feel like there's one approach to it and then there's the other approach which is all of you have unconscious bias and all of you are victims of it and that can create a really us versus them. I was thinking about even let's say simple definition. A couple of things that's occurred to me having conversations about our allies group on Power Soup and the three sort of areas. And I think we've touched on one, which is sort of uncomfortable or challenging conversations or conversations that challenge maybe your beliefs and mindsets. And one of the ones yesterday that I loved was we got welcomed with a pōwhiri, which is a traditional Māori welcome, onto a marae, which is a beautiful meeting house for anyone who's listening from outside of New Zealand. And very early on, they were talking about in Māori culture, women tend to sit at the back and men sit at the front. And it's really controversial because in Pākehā white people culture, we really equate status to sitting at the front and it feels offensive. And one of the guys said, oh, there's no status to where you sit. In fact, in our culture, the status is at the back because you are then protected by the people at the front and the most important people come to the back. And I thought, isn't that just such a great example of an unconscious bias that I had that I just assume every culture follows the same norms as mine and it is offensive to do it differently. And I think the more we have those conversations that challenge your beliefs and mindsets, and that wasn't what I'd consider a challenging conversation, but it did challenge. That's the first step, and I completely agree with you. It has to be done without shame or accusing, and sometimes that is the way it's communicated, and sometimes that's the way it's received. So I would also challenge allies to go, when you feel that sense of, like, defensiveness rising, really challenge yourself to get curious instead, and that can be really hard, but it is part of the process. And then the flip side for facilitators is to create environments where you're not pushing that too far, because it doesn't help anyone. So I think that's one area. I think another area, and this is something that we run into a lot, is separate events for separate groups. And we've always run we often have our allies and women coming together and having these amazing conversations as a group, but most of the time we have completely separate groups. And the reason for that is there's a couple of reasons. One is what you spoke about earlier. What we have noticed and what a lot of people notice is when you have a mixed group and whatever the critical mass ratio, whatever it is, women shut down. It is very hard to talk about things like menopause or your experiences at work when there are people there that you may not necessarily the individuals, but the group feel safe around. And so I feel like that is one reason. And then the second reason is we're tackling different topics. Like, if you, and I think menopause is a great example. If you are experiencing menopause, the conversations you are having are very different from someone who may be supporting or leading someone with menopause. And that's okay. But I think what we tend to do, and you spoke about this a bit yesterday, is we conflate equality with equity. And we want everyone to have equal access to everything and equal conversations. And it doesn't work because we all need different things. But that is another point of tension when I think it comes to allyship, is when you are excluded from different conversations. And that feels like it flies in the face of the whole inclusion and diversity conversation. But it's actually important to sometimes come together, everyone, different groups, not just one group, to come together separately to be able to discuss the things that matter to you.
Yeah, no, I love it, and that's that learning and awareness thing, and I just wanted to end on I just quickly looked up in unconscious training, big study, a 5-year study that ended in 2020 said, it's mixed effectively. The first thing is, it increases awareness, so that's good, we've talked about that, but it rarely produces behavior change, so I just wanna end on that, that's gonna be, kinda something I'd love to just end on shortly
Do you
here.
think do you think that's partially because it's one and done, so it's not actually about
Yeah,
the
so that's
behavior?
there were 3 reasons in the study of why it didn't work, actually 4. The first is people talk about moral licensing, like, "I've done the training, therefore I'm, like,
I'm
fine."
good now.
It's, like, done, right? The second is, "You're calling me sexist/racist," and that's the shame, and so I think when delivered poorly, rather than, "Let's examine," like you said, "Let's examine and get curious." So I think when delivered poorly, I think, also they talked actually it can reinforce stereotypes as well because you're kinda calling them out. So, yeah, it's mixed, but nonetheless, I would like to end on I think there are increasingly amazing opportunities for learning and awareness for allyship. We've experienced those, because we get often allies that come to our events. However, what I'd like to do is encourage share this podcast, share it with your manager, share it with your people and culture teams, share it with your partner, share it with whoever. But what I'd love to encourage is for us to bridge the gap between that learning and awareness to behavior change. And behavior change comes when fear of backlash is removed. So when um, allies are worried that people will think they're weak or they're virtue signaling, or they're gonna put their heads above the parapet and, get put themselves into foot in their mouth or whatever, they will not act. They may be aware, but they will not act. So, if I think of an organization or a team that wants to reduce discomfort, it's normalizing, I don't know, for lack of a better word, rituals, like, it's actually normalizing conversation, it's normalizing scripts around, oh, I'd love to like actually giving people scripts for when someone's interrupted as a culture in an office. Like, oh, I'd love to have Susan finish her point as an example. Or, oh, I noticed that Vanessa wasn't in the room. Could we just she kind of is aware of this area, blah, blah, blah. Let's get her in the room. So kind of normalizing that kind of behavior, celebrating allyship, like actually having ally of the month award or whatever. Like I think we have to move past just involving men in events and actually start linking to behaviors and removing the fear of action. So that's all I wanted to end on.
I love that. And having just judged some awards on DE&I, leaders in New Zealand, I have found there is so many people taking amazing action. And sort of, in many ways, it is allyship. Some of them are parts of the groups they're supporting, some of them aren't. But I found it so interesting that sheer array of ways you can just tweak your behavior and do things slightly differently to create much more inclusive environments and be an ally. Yeah, love it. That's great. Join us. And also another action if you're interested. I mean, it's $25 a month to become an ally in Powersuit. It's very small amount. We have organizations who've put, 10, 20 allies on who've put their hand up to join. And we do try and bridge that gap where we give you tools. We've just had a mini masterclass with our group where we give you the tools to go back and talk about conflict and how you can resolve conflict in more helpful ways or uncertainty in more helpful ways. So we're very much giving you those tools and playbooks and templates to be able to take back to your team and have those conversations, which kind of takes the pressure of thinking about what it is. We can hand it to you for $25 a month. It's not much.
Powersuit.com. Check it out, everyone, and we will catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.